Hello everyone and welcome back to another video, where today I'm here to talk to you about how I was finally able to beat Balatro while only using flush fives. So without further ado, let's get right into this. First of all, this challenge is directly in service of Belenos Bear's challenge to beat Balatro with every single hand type. I actually started my attempts a couple of months ago, after seeing his failed flush 5 only attempt, since I of course always love taking on hard challenges for myself. Unfortunately for me, a little over a week ago, Belenos Bear actually did beat the game with just flush 5s, so I am not the first person to beat this challenge. While I offer my sincere congratulations to him for his incredible accomplishment, I would be lying if I didn't mention that this was the biggest blow to my self-esteem through this entire challenge, second only to my attempt that made it to ante 6 before failing. Despite this, thanks to the spirit of gambling, I still did manage to beat it, and after spending hundreds of hours to try to beat this challenge, I still want to show off my winning run today. Also, Belenos Bear has quality of life mods installed like Handy Balatro that don't affect gameplay in any way but give me the technical semantic ability to say that this is the first unseeded unmodded flush 5 only run of Balatro, so haha lol take that lol 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 lol. The rules here are pretty simple. I'm trying to make it through the entire game, meaning through ante 8, while only playing flush 5s, a flush 5 being a set of 5 cards with the same rank and same suit. For this challenge, I decided to play on the erratic deck, which gives me 52 cards of random rank and random suit. This means there's a possibility that I'll start with more than one copy of a card in my deck, or in this case, I'm looking for a deck with at least 5 copies of a single card. I do think that this challenge is technically possible with other decks, since you could always get lucky and start with 2 Arcana skip tags in the first ante, which could give you enough depth, strength, and suit-changing tarot cards to convert at least 5 cards in a standard deck into the same card. However, personally, the only other deck that I think is humanly possible to use is the Magic deck, since that one starts you off with 2 copies of a Fool. That means you would only need to find a single Arcana skip tag in the first ante in order to get a suit changer and a strength, or better yet, death, and you actually have a pretty decent chance of making it through the ante. Personally, though, I think that the erratic deck is the best option for this challenge, since you not only have the possibility of naturally starting with 5 or more of the same card, but you can also find additional Arcana skip tags, like I did in this run, and you can start with additional close cards. What I mean by that is if you're running the Magic deck and use a suit changer on your first Arcana skip tag on 3 of your target rank cards, well, now you're out of suit adjacent cards in your deck, meaning if you find another suit changer later, it's pretty much worthless since you already converted the close cards. While you can technically strength cards to the desired rank, that's a lot more work, meaning you're primarily stuck to using def for deck fixing. Not to mention, you've probably already strengthed to rank adjacent cards as well. Alternatively, if you're using the erratic deck, even if you start with 5 of the same card, that doesn't prevent another half a dozen or so cards from being suit or rank adjacent, essentially meaning that the mid-game deck fixing can be made easier. To take a quick break from generics, in this tarot pack, since my goal is to make as many 10 of clubs as possible, the optimal thing to do is to convert the Jack of clubs into a 10 of clubs using a def card. The reason I want to get rid of a Jack of Clubs specifically is because it would take 12 strength cards to turn it into a 10, whereas any other card will take less strengths. The second tarot card is a little more up in the air because while the Star and in my opinion the Tower are actively detrimental, both the Emperor's random tarot cards and the Hermit's extra $4 are pretty useful. Since it can possibly provide immediate benefits before even the first shop, I opt to take the Emperor, as if I get the Fool or another death from him, it gives me a better chance of making it out of ante 1. I was actually really lucky this attempt, as I was able to find 5 of my 7 10 of clubs with only 2 discards. I'm not one to look at a gift horse in the mouth though, so I'm just happy I was able to make it through ante 1 even if I didn't use the Magician, even though I should have. With ante 1 complete, I want to go over some of the luck needed to beat this challenge. First of all, from a Monte Carlo simulation I made, the probability of getting a deck that has at least 5 of the same cards is about 2.5%, or basically a 1 in 40. The probability of getting a deck with at least 6 of the same cards is about a third of a percent, or a 1 in 300. And for getting a deck with at least 7 of the same cards, the chance drops to 0.03%, or 1 in 3,000. As for higher numbers, getting 8 of a kind has less than a tenth of a percent chance of happening, and I can only recall a single time in my entire 250 hours of footage where I found a deck with 9 of the same card. Of course, this is just whether an attempt is even physically possible, but chances drop like a rock when you factor in chances of getting out of a first ante. Finding out the odds for this was actually easier than finding out the probability of starting with enough of the same cards, since I can just use a sum of hypergeometric distributions. Using this simple probability formula, my probability of escaping ante 1 when I have 5 of the same card is about 1.29%, but this number obviously goes up with more cards. For instance, if I have 6 of the same card, I have about a 5.29% chance, and if I have 7 cards like I did in this attempt, I have about a 12.58% chance. 12.58% might sound good, but if you multiply the chance of having enough copies of a card and actually beating the first round, the probability of getting out of ante 1 for any given run is about 5/100ths of a percent. However, that's coming with quite a bit of hand-waving, as these calculations don't factor in tarot packs like the one in this run, the manacle getting rid of one hand size, or the general problem of hand size only allowing you to discard 4 cards instead of 5 when you have 4 of your required copies in hand. At the end of the day, what I'm trying to get at is that this challenge was a hellhole of luck, and I would not recommend anyone else try this for themselves, as each attempt has such a minuscule chance just to make it out of ante 1. The odds were so bad to me that I literally built a macro just to help me get through attempts faster. Back to the game at hand, I was actually really lucky in my first shop as I was able to find not only the drunkard, but a hallucination. Out of every single joker in the game, the drunkard is probably second best, falling only behind Merry Andy, as the drunkard gives you one additional discard, allowing me to see a total of 28 cards in my deck. If you're wondering how big of a deal that extra discard is, it essentially jumps my odds from 12.5% to about 28%. So yeah, it's a pretty significant joker. As for hallucination, it has a chance to give me a tarot card whenever I open up a booster pack. If a tarot card it gives me is death, it could end up saving my ass. Alternatively, even if it's something useless, I can still sell it for extra econ. So it's just a generally good joker to have. Let's talk scoring. Right now, I have a base score of a little over 3,000 points, and I'm not going to be able to rely on lucky cards proccing to get me up to 7,500 points like I did that last round. I've done a bunch of skipping so far since you get the most econ per shop by doing boss blinds, which is important because I need these shops to be as efficient as possible. That's why I sold the holographic card last shop, since I need as much money as possible for deck fixing. However, if I don't start upping my score, I'm gonna burn out in ante 4. In this shop, I take the clearance sale voucher, as even though it hurts temperance value, it essentially acts as a 1 1/3 times multiplier to my econ. I opened a standard pack looking for more 10 of clubs, and while there is a blue seal in there, they're actually pretty bad for this challenge, not only because it's not a 10 of clubs, hurting my chances of survival by about 2%, but also since even if I do find it, I'll most likely just have to discard it to keep digging for more 10 of clubs. Lastly, I take the Droll Joker for just a bit of insurance, as its plus 10 mult isn't the worst. Unfortunately for me, even though I got a Lover's card from a hallucination from the standard pack, since the go debuff Spade cards, making a card wild here wouldn't be of any help. Luckily enough, I managed to win without needing it. I even managed to get 20 bucks from one of my lucky cards. With ante 2 down and ante 4 approaching, in this next shop I go ahead and pick up Even Steven, as it's essentially a plus 20 mult to my base score, which means it will also benefit from my eventual steal cards. I also open a Celestial pack and get an Eris card, which is one of the fastest scaling planet cards at plus 50 chips and plus 3 mult. I also open up another standard pack looking for more 10 of clubs, but no dice. While the Red Seal gold card looks very enticing, it has the same problems as the Blue Seal, which is exactly why I don't take it. While I don't take the tarot voucher yet, I will come back for it, as tarot cards are honestly a little bit more important than jokers in a lot of ways in this challenge, which is also why it's super sad that Hallucination didn't proc on either of the packs I opened this shop. While ante 4 is approaching, I do have quite a bit of insurance with Droll Joker and Even Steven, so I do end up skipping for the Spectral pack. This pack honestly helped heal some past trauma from a run where an Immolate went horribly wrong, which cost me that run, as this immolate didn't even have the possibility of hitting my 10 of clubs. If you're wondering how much getting rid of 5 cards helps my odds at survival, it brings my chances from about 28% to about 40%, and getting 20 whole dollars is the cherry on top. It's honestly kind of sad to say that 40% chance of surviving a given round is good odds, especially since this round I actually grazed Death's Scythe as I end up only finding 4 of my 10 of clubs. Thankfully, this Lover's card that I've kept for so long actually saves my ass as I'm able to turn a 10 of diamonds into a wild card. The first thing I do in this shop is I go ahead and pick up the Gluttonous Joker, as it's essentially a worse Even Steven, only giving me plus 15 molt. But hey, it's gonna get benefited by my steel cards in the future, so it's something. I also go ahead and pick up the Tarot Voucher since, again, tarot cards are pretty good. Next, I go ahead and open up another standard pack, and while of course there aren't any 10 of clubs, there is a purple seal, which I do seriously consider, since at this point, with that wild card in my mitts, my odds of survival are almost 60%. Also, unlike the gold card or blue seal, I just need to discard the purple seal for a free tarot card, which is significantly easier than holding a card in hand. In the end, I did still skip it though, and that's just because I didn't feel comfortable lowering my odds. Next up, I opened up a Celestial pack and got an Eris card. Next, I re-rolled until I found Smeared Joker. While the Smeared Joker would have let me use my 10 of spades as a 10 of clubs, bringing my odds up to almost 75%, I didn't think it was worth sacrificing a Joker slot just for that, especially since now we're starting to get into the area where score really matters. Now that it's ante 4, we finally found some Arcana packs in the shop. The first tarot pack gave me a Death card, which allowed me to make my 9th 10 of clubs, which, like I said with Smeared Joker, brings our odds up to almost 75%. The second Arcana pack had a Fool in it, which allowed me to keep a spare Death card, which means that I have insurance if I only find 4 10 of clubs, which means my odds of survival just jumped up to a little over 90%. The last thing I do in this shop is I take a World card, and that's just so that in future shops, while I have it in my inventory, World cards won't appear. The next round goes pretty well. I don't even need to use my insurance Death card. The bad news is that right now I'm only making about 20,000 score, which is enough to get me through ante 4, but it does mean I'll die if I go against ante 5's boss blind, which means I'm going to need to start looking for some real scoring opportunities. Unfortunately, those scoring opportunities did not come in the next shop. The biggest thing that happened in this shop is I opened up an Arcana pack which allowed Hallucination to give me a Temperance, which was worth $6, and then I used the Hanged Man to destroy a couple of cards. If you're wondering, that brings our odds of survival up to a little over 94%, which means if I open up a standard pack and it has something useful, I might start being a little bit more comfortable with taking it, even if it isn't a 10 of clubs. Despite what I just said, I did not take the steel 9 of diamonds that was in my next standard pack. After all, a major reason our odds are so high is because of our Death Insurance card. Another thing I had to consider in this shop was whether I should take Chaos the Clown, as while I would have to sacrifice a Joker to do it, I would essentially get a free reroll, which could lead to something good. Although, in the end I ended up not doing that. This next round was pretty uneventful, which is a good thing, since that means I didn't have to use my Death Insurance card. I really don't want to have to use that thing until I absolutely need it. While I say that, it actually might be better to use the Death card so it can reappear in the shops later. However, I am still pretty scared about losing my insurance. The only other thing worth mentioning this round is the fact that I found a couple of lucky cards. Unfortunately, neither of them procced, but it is what it is. I would say that this next shop was pretty average, as the Celestial pack didn't have Eris in it, but Hallucination did let me sell the world. The standard pack was full of a bunch of rocks. I did end up picking up a natural Eris in the shop, and hey, I got to pick up the High Priestess for later use after I get rid of Death. Unfortunately, there weren't any useful jokers, but I should be able to hang on for a little longer with that Eris card. The boss for this ante was the Manacle, and that is particularly bad not just because I see one less card in my deck, but also because whenever I discard, I might only be able to discard 3 or 4 cards depending on how many 10 of clubs I have. Due to these limitations, I only found 4 of my 10 of clubs, which meant I had to use my def card in order to stay alive. Thankfully, by using that def card, I have one more 10 of clubs in my deck, which brings my odds up to a little under 90%. I also got a little lucky with the High Priestess, as it gave me an Heiress card which brought my score for this round up to about 30,000. So far, I would say I've been playing pretty optimally, maybe a little safer than most, especially when looking at my standard pack skips, but the only thing I would say was a major mistake was not using the Magician in Ante 1. This shop, however, features my second and biggest mistake, that being I sell my Gluttonous Joker for a Gross Michelle. This was dumb since the Gluttonous Joker was essentially giving me plus 15 mult during the when played phase, whereas the banana gives me plus 15 mult during the Joker's phase, which is slightly worse since it isn't affected by steal cards. If Gluttonous Joker was my worst Joker, there is an argument to be made that taking Gross Michelle does open the door to possibly getting the best common Joker, Cavendish. However, Gluttonous Joker wasn't my worst Joker. Droll Joker is, since Droll Joker only gives 10 mult during the Joker's phase. Thankfully, I wasn't massively punished for this mistake, but I do feel really dumb for making it. It's not all doom and gloom for this shop though, since luckily enough in the Spectral pack I found a Cryptid card to make 2 more 10 of clubs, which brings my odds of finding a flush 5 up to 96%, which is just kinda crazy considering how low the odds were at the beginning of the run. Next up, the small blind in Ante 5 went just fine as I'm able to find all 5 of my flush 5 with only 1 discard. This next shop is monumental, since it's the first one where I actually take a card from the standard pack. This is because of 3 factors. The first is that my hallucination procced and gave me a def card, giving me an over 99% chance of being able to make a flush 5 even if I add a card to my deck. The second reason was because the card had a purple seal, which I've already said are good. And lastly, the card itself, while not a 10 of clubs, was a 9 of clubs, meaning I'd be able to turn it into a 10 of clubs with a single strength card. Also, I was never punished for my mistake since I was able to replace my Droll Joker with an Abstract Joker, which is just a nice solid plus 15 mult. Since these next couple of rounds are pretty uneventful, I think it's a good time to talk about vouchers, especially since right now I'm actively not taking one of the best vouchers in the game, the Grabber. I would say the voucher I'm looking for the most is Wasteful and its Upgrade Recyclomancy, as they each give an additional discard, which while not crucial anymore now that I have a 99% chance of survival, they would be a nice buffer, and at this point could even let me sell the Drunkard for an additional scoring joker. The next ones I'm looking for are the Tarot Merchant and Tarot Tycoon, for reasons I already mentioned when I picked up the Tarot Merchant. I would also like to find a Telescope for guaranteed Heiress cards since blue seals are so bad. Another semi-crucial one is Director's Cut, as if there's one thing that could destroy this run, it would be the Water Boss Blind, which removes all of your discards, so being able to re-roll it would be some massive insurance. While it might be even greater insurance, I wouldn't say that Retcon's unlimited rerolls are that important. I would say the next ones I'm looking for in no particular order would be Overstock and Overstock Plus, Clearance Sale and Liquidation, and Reroll Surplus and Reroll Glut. These are all essentially decent econ vouchers which are nice to have. I would also be into going back in time with the Hieroglyph voucher as it could give me more time to scale for the tiny price of 1 hand each round. Since we need to win in 1 hand anyway, losing one of my extra ones is just a little loss in econ. As for Petroglyph, the price of a discard is obviously way too high of a price to pay. The last vouchers I'd be interested in are the Paintbrush and Pellet vouchers, as their extra hand size could come in handy, not only making the process of making flush 5s easier, but it would also allow me to keep more cards in hand, possibly opening up Blue Seal, Gold card, and Steel card potential. As for vouchers I wouldn't take, I would not take Magic Trick since diluting the shop with cards that are 51 out of 52 times worthless is pretty dumb. I might take Illusion if I had Magic Trick, but since I would never take Magic Trick, we don't need to worry about that. While getting Antimatter for the extra Joker slot would be really nice, having to spend the speculative $10 on the blank voucher is not worth it in the short term in my opinion, and I would only get it if I was swimming in cash. Like I said with Hieroglyph, hands don't matter that much, which is why the normally extremely powerful Grabber and Nacho Tong vouchers are ones I would not take, since the $10 down payment is not worth the slight increase in end of round cash for their extra hands. I would say similar logic is why I wouldn't normally take the extra interest vouchers, seed money, and money tree as well. Lastly, there are just some bad vouchers out there that I wouldn't take since they aren't good, such as Planet Merchant and Planet Tycoon, Crystal Ball and Omen Globe, and Hone and Glow Up. With that, it's time to get back into the game as I started making a pretty substantial pivot. That being after getting greedy looking for the 10 of spades, squandering a pretty good chance to use the moon on some decent cards, in the last shop, Hallucination gave me a pretty powerful fool to use with Death, and the two Arcana packs each gave me some chariots to turn some cards to steel. I would consider this a pivot from making just normal 10 of clubs to guarantee finding a flush 5 to now making as many steel 10 of clubs as possible, as they will be instrumental in keeping up with the score requirements. That's why even though I find a winning flush 5 this round, I still spend my Def and Fool to make more steel cards, since only having 4 steel cards in the deck is nowhere near enough. Since the only really interesting thing that happens over the next couple of rounds is that I pick up a Gold Seal 9 of Hearts since I already have a Strength and Moon Tarot card, I think now is a good time to talk about bosses. First of all, some bosses don't have gimmicks that hurt us at all since we're winning each round in a single turn by playing flush 5s. These would include the Hook, the Fish, the Psychic, the Eye, the Mouth, the Needle, and the Tooth. Next, some bosses have gimmicks that debuff certain cards, such as the Club, the Goad, the Window, the Plant, the Head, and the Mark. Obviously, if your target card is not the same suit as the suit debuffing boss's suit, or your target card is not a face card in the context of the plant or mark, you don't have anything to worry about besides maybe wild cards not working on a suit bosses. If your target card is debuffed by the boss, since flush 5s have such a high base score, early antes aren't affected by this very much, however the debuffs become more of a problem later when you have to rely more on your cards for scoring. The same logic applies to the pillar as well. Next, there are some bosses I would consider from minor to major annoyances. First up is the Ox, which sets money to 0. By using all your money in the prior shop, this doesn't actually do anything. If anything, if you're using the credit card, it can pull you out of debt. I would normally consider this a minor annoyance since during the early antes you're already using all of your money to go super hard on deck fixing, meaning losing the tiny amount of remaining money isn't that big a deal. However, this boss can only appear after reaching ante 6, at which point the deck fixing phase is over, and you want to keep some money for interest. Even still, this doesn't target survivability, just econ which can be manipulated with shops, so I wouldn't say it's that bad of a boss. The wall has a 4 times score requirement, which can be scary, especially during the early antes, but considering that's its only effect, at worst this may require some glass card investments to clear. The same goes for the Violet Vessel, which has a times 6 requirement. However, since it's the final boss, you can get even riskier with glass cards, since shattering no longer matters if you win. The wheel isn't too bad since even if a target card is flipped, there is a chance that it will be between 2 other target cards, and even if it's on the edge, it probably won't affect my odds or discards. The arm, decreasing the level of my poker hand, is slightly annoying since it hurts my score a little, but overall it isn't the worst since I'm only playing one hand. The manacle is annoying for the reasons I described when I fought it, and is the only bad blind that can appear in ante 1. The Serpent is actually one of the best bosses to go against. While during the early game the Serpent is bad since it limits the cards I get from discarding, in the late game being able to go over to max hand size is pretty useful since I can hold more steel and more gold cards. The catch is that the Serpent only starts appearing in ante 5, so I don't have to worry about it appearing in the early game. The Flint is pretty stinky for this run since I abuse the fact that the flush 5 has a high base score, so having my score cut in quarter is pretty bad. It's not unrecoverable with enough steel or glass, but it's pretty bad nonetheless. As for finisher boss blinds, the Amber Acorn, Verdant Leaf, and Crimson Heart all come down to your current Joker situation. As for this run, since my Jokers are just providing small flat mult bonuses, all of these bosses are pretty easy. The easiest would be the Verdant Leaf since I could use all my discards and then sell the Drunkard for no ill effect. The only problematic finisher boss blind is the Cerulean Bell, which force selects a random card in hand. This is bad since if an early discard selects a target card, I might need to discard it. However, that adds onto the pre-existing risk that the blind might not select another target card. Also, this means that I can only use a single Justice Tarot card since I can't unselect the selected card to select a second target for a Justice from a Fool. Also, the Chariot is useless since you can only use it on the selected card, which will need to be discarded or played, negating the effect of the steal. Well, as long as we don't run into the Cerulean Bell, we should be fine. That covers all but the two worst boss blinds, the second worst being the House, which starts your first hand face down. You can negate this effect by using enhancements to flip cards briefly, and there are sorting strats to help narrow down what a card is, but it's really hard to guarantee that you won't be discarding target cards. The worst boss blind, though, is obviously the water, which removes all of your discards. If you run into the water, you better hope you find a boss blind reroll, luchador, or chico, or your death is almost certain. I will say that I don't think it's a guaranteed loss in later antes after deck fixing, especially if you bring a death card and Fool into the boss blind, but that's true for any boss blind, so I wouldn't call that a plus for the water, especially since it still means that you have to draw 3 target cards in your first hand, which is absolutely not a guarantee. That covers all the bosses, and since I've been talking for so long, we're already in Ante 7. At this point, the main things I want are Eris cards, but most importantly, Exmult. While there are a decent number of ways to get Exmult, not all of them are great for me at this point. For instance, finding the Duo, Trio, Family, or Tribe are great for their flat Exmult bonus, but since I'm not playing straights, the order is useless to me. Other Exmult jokers have similar problems like Flower Pot, Seeing Double, and Bloodstone since I'm only playing clubs. Some other jokers might have had promise earlier in the run, but now that there isn't time to scale, jokers like Lucky Cat, Hologram, Vampire, Madness, Constellation, or Glass Joker wouldn't be very efficient. That isn't to say all scaling X-Mult jokers are bad for me, as Steel Joker and Throwback scale without them being in your hand, and would be great. Some other jokers I'm keeping an eye out for include Walkie Talkie, Campfire, Blueprint, Brainstorm, basically any polychrome or negative joker, and after Gros Michel expires, Cavendish. Obviously, I also want more Steel 10 of clubs in my deck as well, so I'm definitely looking for more Death cards whenever I can find them. Speaking of Steel 10 of clubs, speak of a devil. No, not the one that turns cards to gold. I think the last major system to talk about in the context of this challenge is skipping and the skip tags. First of all, I think that it's always a good idea to completely skip through Ante 1, even if the tags are boss reroll tags, since the boss gives more money than the small or big blinds, and you want as much money as physically possible to make the first shop as efficient as possible. Starting in Ante 2, I get a lot more picky with the tags, only taking at least half decent ones. This is because if you full send in this challenge, the required score will quickly reach your score ceiling. Now, to give my opinion on individual tags, I would probably take the uncommon and rare tag up to ante 3 or 4, since the jokers can often provide a decent amount of power, or at the very least some decent sell value. I would probably take the negative tag up to ante 5 or 6, since getting an additional joker is usually good, or at the very least it can be a sacrifice to the Verdant Leaf. I would probably take the foil tags up to ante 2, holographic tags up to ante 3, and polychrome tags up to antes 5 or 6. While getting a joker with an addition is always nice, there's nothing stopping the joker from being otherwise useless. However, if the joker being otherwise useless was my number one issue, I would probably still be more inclined to take the negative and polychrome tags in later antes. However, there's an issue that the joker may be consumable, like popcorn or ice cream. While limited power with glass cards is something I'm interested in the last round or two, having a time limit of a few rounds before my joker dies is too scary for me. The investment tag is one I'm willing to take up to antes 3 or 4, as a boon of money is usually worth it in the early game. The voucher tag is one I only take in ante 1, as it's too bad to take in future antes. While yes, finding a wasteful voucher is really nice, the fact that this just lets you see an additional voucher, which might be completely useless, isn't worth it to me. Maybe if the tag made the additional voucher free or at least half price, I might be more accepting of it, but as it is, this is one of the worst tags. The boss reroll tag is the worst tag in this challenge, since it's the only one that is actively detrimental to your survival. This is because you can only see each boss once until you see all of the bosses. What this means is that every time you use the boss reroll tag, you are actively approaching the water. Now, on the flip side, if the upcoming boss is the water, this becomes the literal best skip tag in the game. But that is a very rare scenario in this challenge. The standard, charm, meteor, and buffoon tags are all ones I'm willing to take in Ante 2, but not much later than that, since later on you can make better use of seeing the shop than just getting a single pack. The handy and garbage tags are the only tags I would never take, since they only start appearing in Ante 2 and they give such a small pittance of cash that they aren't worth using. The ethereal tag is one that I might be willing to take in Antes 4 and 5 since the prospect of immolating some cards is very enticing, and spectral packs rarely show up in the shop. I would probably say that I would be willing to take the coupon tag up to Ante 3 since it can make early shops extremely efficient, but when all your joker slots are full it becomes a lot less enticing. The double tag is one that I usually would love to take, but in this challenge I would only recommend it in Antes 1 or 2, since after that you probably aren't going to find something worth skipping for. The juggle tag is one that I'd be willing to take in Antes 1 and 2, but also in Ante 8. During the early game, the juggle tag acts as a helpful tag that lets you see more of your deck, which is crucial when your odds of survival are so low. As for Ante 8, having more cards in hand means more steal cards, which help hit that final score hurdle of 100,000 points. The D6 tag is one that I'm willing to take in Antes 1 or 2, since it can make shops more efficient, assuming you have a lot that you want to buy or look for. The top-up tag is one that I would probably only be willing to take in Ante 2 since it only creates 2 common jokers, meaning it can't give you Merry Andy or any other powerful uncommon or rare joker. The speed tag is one that I would only be willing to take in Ante 2 or 3, maybe Ante 4 if I've done a ton of skipping, but this one's pretty subjective on how much money it's going to give. The orbital tag is one I might be willing to take in Antes 5 or 6. This of course hinges on whether the hand it's going to upgrade is flush 5 or not. The economy tag falls into the same category as the speed tag, as if it's only going to give me a few bucks, I'll probably only take it in Antes 1 or 2, but if it's giving me $40, well, I might be willing to take it in Antes 4 or 5. We are finally here, all the way in Ante 8, with only 2 more rounds before I can call this challenge complete. While I was talking about the different tags in the game, I ended up swapping my hallucination for a juggler. This was simply because more hand size means more steel cards, and we're going to need all the steel we can get to make it through these last few rounds. In this second to last shop, I go ahead and pick up a Justice card, who will help me in an emergency turn a card to glass. While I don't need this extra score for this round, it is some nice insurance for the Cerulean Bell. I will admit that I cut this round closer than I would have liked, since I only had 2 steel cards in hand and only ended up scoring 88,000 points. That was enough for the 75,000 point threshold of this round, but it wouldn't have been enough to crack the 100,000 point requirement of the next round. That being said, we can finally enter the final shop. With any luck, I might have found something useful. Maybe a polychrome, maybe a death card, maybe some source of Exmalt, maybe an Eris card or two. But this last shop was not fruitful, giving me only a fool. There is nothing left for me to try now. This is it. Just like the beginning of this challenge, the question is, can I get lucky enough to find the cards that I need? It is time to tackle the Cerulean Bell. My starting hand had 2 10 of clubs in it, one of which being steel, and my selected card was a 4 of diamonds. My second hand fared better with 5 10 of clubs, but still only a single steel, and my selected card was only a 6 of clubs. Finally, my third hand had 6 10 of clubs, still only a single steel, however the game selected one of my 10s, the one with the purple seal. At this point I had to decide, would one glass card and one steel card be good enough? Alternatively, if I had got rid of this 10, I would only have 2 chances for the game to select a 10 again. So I decided to take this final shot and pray that it was enough. It is over. I am the second person to beat unseeded Balatro with only flush 5s. with a final deck consisting of 19 10 of clubs, 8 of which being steel, I have beaten the Cerulean Bell. Please do not try this challenge yourself, as it will drive you to madness. But with that, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.